So last year, I read My Husband's Wife, which was the debut novel from Jane Corry. This was a book I could not stand. I think out of all the books I read last year, it was my least favorite book. Mainly the reason why I hated this book was because I hated every single character. I think there was one character that you should have been rooting for, but I couldn't stand her either, so I just ended up not liking anybody. I distinctly remember, even though I hated this book and had to force myself to finish it because I try my best not to abandon books that I get an advance copy to, there was something about the book that kept me open-minded as far as reading other books by this author. I didn't enjoy the book because the characters were so deplorable, but the writing style was what made me think, I want to read another book by this author even though I hated this one. This year, Jane Corry came out with her second novel called Blood Sisters. It came out in January. I didn't get a chance to grab it right away because I was in the middle of reading other books, but I finally got to it. I am really glad I read this book. I actually enjoyed this one. I wouldn't say it blew me away, but it was, to me, a very solid book. If you were to read the inside of the dust jacket, basically it says that one day, 3 girls started walking to school, and then an hour later, one was dead. From the start, you're obviously not told what happened. How did this one girl get killed? But the book splits its narration between 2 characters, both in their own way unreliable in their narration. One of them was left severely disabled by the accident, brain damage, can't speak, can't walk, but you're reading her thoughts. The other protagonist is the older half-sister who was left physically unscathed by the accident 15 years prior, but has a lot of guilt, and obviously nothing is what it seems. The way the first novel handled the past and present was pretty simple. It had part 1, which was 2001, and then part 2 was 15 years later in 2016. This book flip-flops between the two. Thinking like a storyteller, it would not be a good story if they went straight, because you can't get the twist and the revelations in this particular story by doing it linear, so you will eventually find out how everything happened. I did enjoy this one. A lot of reviews didn't like the character of, I believe her name is Kitty, which is the character that is left disabled and you're reading her thoughts. I don't know, maybe it's because I find myself around disabled or special needs people more often than others. She didn't aggravate me as much as she aggravated other readers, but I do understand why they were aggravated. I think it was because she seemed not to have a lot of remorse for just her daily behavior. She just seemed very rude, and I think that's what bothered people, but it didn't bother me as much. I was more bothered by the perfectly abled sister. Her thought process annoyed me, but that was because she had a lot of guilt, which you will find out about. I'm not gonna spoil it for you. I just am actually really glad that I read the book, because I had a feeling that her debut novel was just not for me. And I would actually recommend both books because it could be that I just had a strong emotional response to the characters in that first book. You may not be affected that way. I couldn't deal with it for some reason. But the other thing about the first book is that it was really dragging for like a good 2/3 of the book, and it started to pick up, but then it was like the last third of the book, let's throw 10,000 twists, and it was just, it got to the point where it wasn't even believable anymore. It just didn't make any sense. But this one, by the time you get to the twists and revelations, it actually fit. It wasn't like too much to be true. I really liked this novel, and I'm glad that I gave this author a second chance. I would be more than happy to try her third book. That's all. That's it for now, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend or week. Happy reading.